This is Rahim Rashidi, or Mr. Kurd, from Washington, D.C. We have Honorable Thomas Kaplan, Kurdish friend first, and founder and chairman at the Justice for Kurds. I know you are super busy. Thank you very, very much for this great opportunity. Let's start by event you holding tomorrow. Could you tell us about the event that you are holding tomorrow, please?
It's a pleasure, Rahim. And it's a privilege and an honor to be with you on this show, as well as to have the privilege of serving as chairman of Justice for Kurds. Tomorrow, we will be kicking off a 4-part series on the Kurds in the Middle East at Yale University. Tomorrow's panel will consist of Bernard-Henri Lévy and myself in discussion with Emma Skye. But most importantly, we will have the great honor that the keynote speaker at this conference will be Neshirvan Barzani, the president of the Kurdish regional government. And this is something that we truly, truly, truly appreciate. Our role at Justice for Kurds is to make sure that the Kurdish people, their culture, their shared interests and shared values with the West are front and center. It's not only that we wish to promote the virtues of the Kurds, but it's that we seek that ultimately they will have justice in all those lands in which they inhabit. And the opportunity that we have to be able to show the Kurdish people how many friends they actually share in the West is a great, great, great honor for us.
Honorable Kaplan, these kind of events and meetings, how is important for the West to educate not only government and experts, the middle class of the West, in your opinion, please?
When we started Justice for Kurds, one of the things which came as such a pleasant surprise for us was that whenever we would bring up the subject of the Kurds, anyone we spoke to would agree that the Kurdish cause was an honorable one. That's extremely important. We live in a very divided society now in the United States and in many parts of the West. And yet what we've shown at Justice for Kurds, if you look at our advisory council, is that we have managed to bridge this great divide between left and right. In Europe, we have socialists, we have conservatives. In the United States, we're balanced between Republicans and Democrats on those who say we want to be part of this experience. We want to show the Kurdish people that sometimes, even if their best friends are the mountains, we are all part of the Kurdish mountain chain now. And this was a revelation to a lot of people. It was a revelation in many government circles in the West when we were able to show just how popular the Kurdish cause is, that it's not a minority view, that it's not a niche of people who are very passionate. And don't get me wrong, we are extremely passionate about this cause and the Kurdish people. Bernard-Henri Lévy is absolutely the Kurds' best friends in the West. I myself am only second to BHL in this, but I shall overtake him. I shall overtake him in the spirit, the best spirit of Peshmerga. But suffice to say that Bernard-Henri Emily Hamilton, who is our executive director, and myself are committed to doing whatever it takes to keep the Kurdish cause front and center, and not just speaking about it, but advocating for it, whether it's in the KRG, whether it's in Rojava, whether it's those who seek peaceful autonomy in Turkey or in Iran. As far as we are concerned, the Kurdish people both deserve to be able to have freedom and have shown that they are responsible and should enjoy that freedom. The Kurdish people are part of the solution for the Middle East. They're in no areas are they part of the problem. How many people can we actually say that about? They're the good guys. We have shared interests with them. The sacrifices that the Kurds in Iraq and Syria have made for the defense of the West, not just their own home countries, is extraordinary. The lives that have been lost, the wounded, we owe the Kurds such a debt of gratitude. But it's not just that, it's the fact that even during these harsh times of war, where the Kurds have managed to achieve control, they have done so with respect for minorities, with respect for other religions, with respect for women. They have not used crisis or the fog of war to suppress people and repress them, but rather to give them sanctuary. And so for us, it's about making sure that the things that the Kurds have done are recognized, not forgotten, and that actions are taken which can improve the condition of the Kurds wherever they are. We're not just about talk, we're about action.
Right, and I would like to say something about the Emily Hamilton, and I called her Peshmerga. You done great job for the Kurds and Kurdish cause as well, but she done a great job for us as journalists. She made very easy and opened the way to connect you and Honorable Bernard Levy and others. Thank you very, very much. I remember first time we met at the United Nations, it was in November 2017 when we had a Peshmerga movie over there. By Bernard Levy. How did you become interested in the Kurds, Mr. Kaplan?
My engagement, my first engagement with the Kurdish cause, and because my background is as a historian, when I get interested in something, I tend to go very deep. I became more aware of the injustices which had been inflicted on the Kurds. Now, interestingly, I came about this as someone who was working on his doctorate in military history. And I had the great opportunity to be able to continue my studies in history at Oxford University with one of the greatest military historians of his time, Sir Michael Howard. And I decided to focus on counterinsurgency, guerrilla warfare. One of the most famous guerrilla warfare experiences in modern times was the battles which were waged by Mustafa Barzani in Iraq. And when I was reading about the betrayal of the Barzani uprising by the Shah of Iran, I started to connect a few dots. And I came to a somewhat mystical belief that those who forsake, who betray the Kurds don't have a happy end. And I hope that those who are doing so right now, whether they're from the region or perhaps even closer to my home, take this to heart. In 1971, the Shah, who had been backing Mustafa Barzani, decided to make a deal with Saddam Hussein on the Shatt al-Arab, the Treaty of Algiers. And in return for Iraqi concessions, the Shah dropped the rebellion that he had been assisting with the help of the CIA and with the help of the Israelis. And it was very traumatic for the Americans and the Israelis to have to leave the sides of their Kurdish friends. And I was very touched by this. At that time, Saddam Hussein was still in power, but I predicted that he was probably going to have a bad end. You know, the deal that he'd made with Barzani and the night of the exploding imams, if you remember this story. It wasn't going to end well. And many years after, I told the Shah's widow, Empress Farah, that of all the reasons that we know that the dynasty fell in 1979, I believe it can be traced to the betrayal of the Kurds in 1971. Now, I am a believer that over time, the arc of history will bend towards justice, as Martin Luther King said. Having said that, it is the responsibility of all of us to do what we can to move that along. As the former foreign minister of France during Napoleon's time, Talleyrand, once said, the mission of a statesman is to see the inevitable and to expedite its occurrence. We see ourselves as being on a mission to keep the importance of the Kurds front and center to the Western audiences, to highlight that we share interests with them and values, to highlight the fact that wherever the Kurds have been given control, they have done so for minorities, for different religions, for gender equality. These are things which are rare in the Middle East, and yet really everywhere where the Kurds have been given the opportunity to exercise autonomy, they have shown themselves to be responsible players. The Kurds are part of the solution everywhere they are, not the problem. And we have to embrace this. We have to be able to look something that is good and true and loyal and say, we are with you. We will not abandon you. Now, of course, I understand how difficult that is to imagine. Justice for Kurds was created in March of 2018, after the referendum in KRG, after the invasion, but only by several months. And of course, before one of the greatest betrayals in modern times, what we call the American Munich, the betrayal of the Syrian Democratic Forces to Turkey by President Trump. I would perfectly understand if Kurds said, we really do have no friends but the mountains. But I can assure you, Justice for Kurds has already proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that left, right, rich, poor, all races, creeds, find common cause with the Kurds. If we can build on the momentum which we have, and events like Yale are very important in that. The people who will be speaking are very influential, but we work across the entire arc. We speak with Congress, we speak with the political classes in Western Europe. We make sure that the bad deeds of those who are repressing the Kurds are publicized, so that those who understand that they think that they should be speaking for the Kurds can actually see that in the Western media, the Kurdish cause is very popular. There are very, very few people who will take the sides of those who are repressing the Kurds, whether it's Turkey, Iran, or anyone else. And we emphasize this. We emphasize that supporting the Kurds is popular. And I can tell you, it is. There is no other organization, I believe, that has shown so convincingly, so quickly, that we cross the political divide by our support for the Kurds. And you should, the Kurdish people should get some measure of encouragement that what we're doing is finding a lot of friends for you and working to mobilize those friendships to be able to improve your lives as well.
In my understanding, this kind of information, your experience, your background help you, not push you. It is your responsibility to create a justice for Kurds. And what do you hope to achieve?
The first thing that we want to achieve, and it's almost embarrassing to have to confess this, is we have to, first of all, ensure that the Kurds will not be betrayed again. And that's why I say that it's embarrassing, because what we've done to the Kurds is outrageous. What President Trump did when he overlooked, even if I don't even know whether he actually even knew the facts, that 13,000 Kurds had died, 30,000 wounded, that the Kurds had taken in minorities, that they were successful militarily. How many allies do we have that actually win wars? To betray them was something which was a huge shock. In the United States, it was meant with horror by Republicans, even those who were too afraid to stand up to the president, and by Democrats. President Biden is pro-Kurd. Kamala Harris is pro-Kurd. Now, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, so I'm not saying this with an axe to grind. I can tell you that the day that the SDF was thrown under the bus by President Trump, I had dinner that night, small dinner, just a few of us, with Mike Pompeo. And I liked Mike. And Mike came in, and it was very clear he'd had a very difficult day. It was that day. And I had no idea, of course, that this was going to happen. And I was shocked that he didn't cancel the dinner, actually. And when he came in, took off his tie, he asked for a beer. And I said, Mr. Secretary, I'm not going to spend the evening beating you up on what just happened to the Kurds for only one reason. Because I can't possibly believe that anyone with a sense of dignity, honor, humanity, loyalty could ever possibly agree with or condone what the president just did. But I will tell you this, I hope you had the shittiest day of your entire life. He didn't argue with me. There was nothing to say. In fact, I'll tell you something. He actually said, he's a military man, you know, he went to West Point. He actually said, if there were an ally who you would say is a textbook case of a great partner and a great ally, it would be the Kurds. Now, he made his decision, he stayed. There were others who were heroic. James Mattis, for example, Brett McGurk, both of whom resigned in protest and candidly are heroic. John Bolton had just left. And I think that was one of the reasons, actually, why Trump made that move with Erdogan, because Bolton was very, very strongly pro-Kurd. I have a joke with him. If you remember, about a year earlier, Trump had a conversation with Erdogan, and he was about to throw the Kurds, away earlier. And Bolton was in Israel, and he said, he was asked the question, he said, no, we're not going to do it. He basically rebelled against his own president. He said, oh no, we're not doing it. He refused. And he gave the Kurds an extra 6-9 months before Trump did it again after Bolton left. And I told him, and I'm going to do this, I said, one day, maybe in Erbil, maybe one day in Afrin, who knows, maybe Diyarbakir, you never know. I'm going to put up a statue to you, John, and it's going to be in the shape of a huge mustache, because that's what he's most well known for. And I think a beautiful sandstone mustache, John Bolton, would fit. The Kurds do have friends. We will mobilize those friendships to be able to advance your cause. But when you say, what do I want to accomplish? The first thing is no more betrayals. Once we get that done, and I think we're okay with that for the time being, then we want to move and take the cause higher and higher and higher, so that the freedoms of Kurds everywhere can be acknowledged, because they are entitled to those freedoms. They are entitled to those rights. They are the largest disenfranchised people without their own government. That is unfortunately, without their own independent state. They have their own government. It's not going to happen overnight. We're dealing with a very, very unfortunate geography, but I can tell you, I travel a lot in the Arab world. The respect for the Kurds is enormous. There's nothing that I've said about the Kurds in my conversation with you that you would not also hear in the Gulf states, for example. Not to mention Israel.
Mr. Kaplan, who is involved in working with Justice for Kurds?
Well, you have Bernard-Henri Lévy, who is the president and co-founder with me. I'm the chairman. And Emily Hamilton, who is our executive director. And we rely upon the network of people who have raised their hands and said, tell me what I can do to help you. And it is this network, most of whom have put their names publicly out there as part of our advisory council. It's an astonishing list of people, from actors to generals to artists to politicians and diplomats. They all are there. We're going to see a number of them making appearances at the Yale conference. David Petraeus, for example, is an amazing friend to the Kurds. James Mattis. These are amongst the most highly regarded men in the United States. Heroes. Heroes for who they are as Americans, and to us, heroes as well, for what they represent in their fidelity to the Kurdish cause. So, we are the spear, perhaps, Emily being the tip of the spear. And our job is to make sure that we are part of that arsenal for the Kurdish people, but there are a lot of people out there who want to help us. So it's not just us.
In Europe as well, right?
Of course, absolutely. the Kurdish cause is hugely regarded in France, from President Macron all the way through to all political parties. We obviously still remember the great memory of Madame Mitterrand, who was nearly assassinated in displaying her solidarity with the Kurds. But the same can be said in the UK. We have advisory council members from the Labour Party, from the Conservative Party, from the Liberal Party. We have advisory council members from Spain, from Italy, from Middle Europe. The Polish foreign minister, former Polish foreign minister, Radek Sikorski, strong supporter of the Kurdish people. It stretches far and it stretches wide.
Yep.
I think it's something that's, you can say it's a cause whose time has come. And you're going to see the campaign accelerating.
Mr. Kaplan, could you tell us about its activities? What is the organization doing now?
The organization is applying itself across the entire front, not just promoting activities which support Kurdish culture, but politically working behind the scenes, sometimes much closer to the front than anyone would imagine, in world capitals in order to keep the Kurdish cause alive and in order to get support, some of it in writing, from the different constituencies in the United States. We were behind the scenes in working to get the Kurdish cause in both the Democratic and Republican platforms. You're seeing a lot of statements now in congressional testimony. We're obviously applauding this and doing whatever we can to encourage these kinds of expressions of bipartisan support for the Kurds. We want to see that expressions of solidarity with the Kurds are commonplace and accepted as normal, so that not only will there be no betrayals, but that we can build on that momentum in order to be able to see real advances for the Kurds. We're working on many, many fronts. Some are seen, some are not. But I think you know Bernard-Henri Lévy enough to know, and and anyone who knows me enough to know that we don't play poker. We're not bluffing, and we look to get action on behalf of the Kurds.
I believe you remind me something. You have a program and plan to have some status of Peshmerga in New York and in Washington, right?
Yes, yes, that is correct.
Okay, I hope it will happen. Last question, what do you have a message for Kurds and the world more broadly, for all parts of Kurdistan?
The most important thing which I would like to impress is that the Kurdish cause is just. The Kurdish cause is noble. Wherever there are Kurdish populations, you see that they are part of the solution and that they fight the problems in the Middle East. The fact that they suffer from the tyranny of geography, from the betrayals of the Treaty of Lausanne, the betrayals of after the referendum, the betrayal of Rojava, the fact that these things happen, unfortunately, that's part of the Kurdish experience, but that's not the end of the story. I wish to give you encouragement that you have many, many more friends than you know. You have many, many more friends than the mountains. Bernard-Henri Lévy and I and Emily Hamilton are just some of the more visible, active faces, but for a much wider movement. we are not alone. You are not alone in the White House. You are not alone in the Elysee. You are not alone in number 10. Yes, there are challenges. Being divided amongst 4 difficult countries, this is a fate that not very many people have. It's like being the chosen people. Every time, you know, there's a problem, you get chosen. Sometimes you wish that they would choose someone else. What I can tell you is this: everywhere we go and we speak of the Kurds, we get people who acknowledge that the Kurdish cause is just and true. I have not met one person who has ever justified what happened in Rojava. I haven't met one person who didn't believe in their hearts that while it may have been a political miscalculation, the referendum that took place was not fair and the outcome should have been respected. I haven't met anyone who didn't feel that.
Even that was very successful, democratic and peacefully in September 25th.
Completely. Unfortunately, realpolitik triumphs sometimes over the truth. It triumphs over justice, but only for a certain period of time. Every generation or two sees opportunities arise. One of the problems of the Kurds has been that they have been not cynical enough. I'm not a cynical person, so I relate to this. There was a moment in 1919, 1920, when things were just coming together. By 1921, it was gone, sadly. There have been times when the Kurdish cause might have been advanced more aggressively, but instead of seizing those moments, which would have been viewed as opportunistic, the Kurds decided to show themselves as good citizens and not to take advantage of crisis, but to be part of the solution in the crisis. The problem is that when the crisis passes, people very often forget who were their friends. I can't speak for those kinds of people. They are alien to me, they're alien to Bernard, they're alien to Emily. But I will say this, I do believe that the Kurds' time will come, and we will be ready this time. We will be prepared for it. We will be in a position to be able to help turn the screw of history more in your favor. Right now, that means being prepared and trying to advance the agenda in every way possible and being part of good neighbor. But for reasons that will not be the fault of the Kurds, things could very well happen, and we need to be prepared for those moments.
Your Excellency, Thomas Kaplan, Chairman of the Justice for Kurds, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. As I know, you don't like too much be on air and camera, but you accepted our request for this interview. Thank you very, very much. God bless you. God bless United States of America and US ally as well. Hope see you soon.
I thank you very much. Thank you for the honor and the privilege, and God bless you and the Kurdish people.
Thank you.